Hey all, we've talked about synarthrotic joints, joints that don't move very much. That included sutures and gomphoses and synostoses and synchondroses. We talked about amphiarthroses, which are joints that move a tiny bit, like syndesmoses, like the ones we see in between vertebrae, in the bodies of vertebrae, and symphyses, like the pubic symphysis. Syndesmoses are ones that you find between the radius and all the symphyses are the ones you'd find in between the vertebrae and between the pubic bones. Our last type of joint is called a diarthrotic joint, or diarthroses. All diarthrotic joints are highly movable, and the term in terms of what is composed at that joint, these highly movable joints, they are synovial joints. We've previously gone over the 4 different membrane types: cutaneous, mucous, serous, and synovial. You find synovial membrane, which has simple squamous and areolar, but it's an incomplete basement membrane. So there's this leakage of fluid, and that's synovial fluid. You find synovial membrane and synovial fluid at these joints, and that helps lubricate these joints, allowing for a wider fluid range of movement. There are several synovial joints. I'm going to attempt to go over the major ones. And before I do that, actually, let me go over what we find at a generic synovial. At a generic synovial joint. Okay, here we have the shoulder. Here's the scapula. Here's the glenohumeral joint, and here's another synovial joint, the acromioclavicular joint. Let's look at the glenohumeral joint. Here we have articular cartilage. So at the ends of the bone, we have articular cartilage as protection, and it's remnants of endochondral ossification. It's hyaline cartilage. This is the joint cavity where the synovial membrane and synovial fluid would be. You can see it here on this diagram, articular cartilage in blue, and that space is where the synovial membrane and fluid would be. The synovial fluid doesn't have a whole lot of nutrients, but it does slightly nourish the cartilage here, which is why if you do damage this cartilage, it doesn't heal very well, because it's basically just low oxygen, low nutrient interstitial fluid. Other important things you can find at many synovial joints, besides the joint capsule and the articular cartilage that border it, and synovial fluid and synovial membrane. At many movable joints, you find sacs that surround the joint, synovial sacs that surround the joint. Those would be known as bursae. B-U-R-S-A is singular, B-U-R-S-A-E plural. Bursa, singular, bursae, plural. There's just additional synovial fluid contained within sacs to help lubricate this joint. Because we have muscles and tendons attached to the bone, we also need ways to protect the tendon. And so often around the tendon, we have a special synovial sac surrounding those tendons. Those are called tendon sheaths. Tendon sheaths wrap around the tendons and protect it to help minimize inflammation, help minimize friction. Specifically in the knee, we've got some more special features. These pads on either side are dense fibrocartilage pads. That's called the meniscus, or plural menisci. So you only have the menisci found in the knee, since the knee supports so much weight. Sometimes, like in the jaw, you can find an additional disc, fibrocartilage disc between the joint, and it separates the joint cavity into two. This model doesn't show it, so you'll have to use your imagination a bit. But if there's a pad of fibrocartilage that's separating the joint capsule into two, that's called an articular disc. An articular disc can be found at some joints like the temporomandibular joint. At any of these joints, what you can also find are fat pads. It's really important to have fat at these joints because fat provides cushion. That's what we can find generally at synovial joints. Now let's look at the names of specific synovial joints. Starting with the head, this is the temporomandibular joint that helps you open your jaw, depress and elevate your jaw, your mandible. Between your atlas, C1, and your occipital bone, that's your atlanto-occipital joint. Atlanto-occipital joint. Between C1 and C2, axis and atlas, that's your atlanto-axial joint. Atlanto-axial. Helps you spin your head, nod your head left and right. While the atlanto-occipital joint helps you nod yes. While you have intervertebral discs that are synarthroses between the bodies of the vertebrae, between the superior and articular facets, of the vertebrae, those are synovial joints. They're called Z joints. Z stands for zygapophyseal. These are the highly movable joints that allows you to flex and extend your spine. Zygapophyseal joints. Between your ribs and your vertebrae, these can move. These are called costovertebral joints. Between the costal cartilage of ribs 2 through 10, these are synovial joints. Those are sternocostal joints. Sorry, ribs 2 through 7. Ribs 2 through 7, those are sternocostal joints. For your collarbone, on the sternal side, from the clavicle to the sternum, this is the sternoclavicular joint, sternoclavicular. And over here we have the acromioclavicular joint, the AC joint, acromion process of the scapula, clavicle, acromioclavicular joint. When we think of what the acromioclavicular joint does is that it can help you shrug up and down or protract and retract your shoulder. When we think of general shoulder movement, this type of movement where you move your humerus, this is the glenohumeral joint because you have the glenoid cavity, glenoid fossa here, and the head of the humerus. Glenohumeral joint is a highly movable shoulder joint. The proximal radioulnar joint, this allows you to twist your arm to pronate and supinate your arm. This proximal radioulnar joint is a synovial joint. The distal radioulnar joint as well can twist over. It's the sheet in between, that's the syndesmosis. That's the amphiarthrosis. But this distal one is synovial. Between the radius and the carpal bones, the proximal carpal bones, between the carpal bones, those are intercarpal. Between the carpal bones and metacarpals, that's carpometacarpal. Between the metacarpals and the phalanges, that's metacarpophalangeal. And then between the different segments of the phalanges, those are interphalangeal. So any movement of your hand where you can go like that, this is interphalangeal, metacarpophalangeal, carpometacarpal, intercarpal, and radiocarpal. Moving down the spine, I know you don't think of this as moving much, but if you're good at moving your hips, between the sacrum and the ilium, this is the sacroiliac joint, where we have that auricular surface on the coxal bone. That's the sacroiliac joint. Your hip is otherwise known as your femoroacetabular joint. Femoroacetabular joint, because it's the femur, head of the femur going into the acetabulum of the coxal bone. The knee, because it's a compound joint, because it has, it's a little not straight, because it has several bones forming this joint, we've got the patella, the femur, and the tibia. The term for this is the tibiofemoral patellofemoral joint. It's like a hyphenated slashed word. Tibiofemoral patellofemoral joint. That's your knee. Going down to the ankle, well, really the tibia and the fibula and then the ankle. Whoops. We've got let me start up here. Between the fibula and the tibia, the fibula does not touch the femur, so it's not part of the knee. From the fibula to the tibia, that's the tibiofibular joint. Tibiofibular joint, the proximal tibiofibular joint. Going down to the ankle, between the talus, fibula, and tibia, your ankle joint is known as your talocrural joint. Here's your talus, fibula, tibia, talocrural, because this together is the Quirrell region. In between your tarsals, your tarsal bones, those are your intertarsal joints. Between the tarsals and the metatarsals, that's your tarsometatarsal joints. Between your metatarsals and your phalanges of the feet, that's your metatarsophalangeal joints. And then these are your interphalangeal joints when you wiggle your toes. Interphalangeal joints of the pes, or of the feet. So you have a ton of different synovial joints in your body. When you normally think of joints, you think of synovial joints. But there are other types of joints, synarthrotic and amphiarthrotic.